So if you have to give a 0 on an obstacle, okay, or, a double 0, that's the only time that we would really like you to put down a comment, okay? Because sometimes there are clerical errors, and you'll see a horse, and rider that gets 9, 10, 9, 10, 9, and all of a sudden there's a 0 on that scorecard.
Right.
And you think, how did that get in there? And very often it was supposed to be a 10.
Right.
So when you do give a 0, make sure that you put a comment down. And a comment could be generally just a brief little comment saying, TO, timed out.
Okay.
They did not complete it in the time. Or IT, insufficient training.
Right.
That's generally why they get 0s, is insufficient training. Then sometimes they get a 0 for going off course. Okay. Now that means that generally there's a line for the obstacle. The horse should be moving in a rather direct line. If he all of a sudden decides that he's not going there and is going to make a big circle or go out over there, well, he's off course.
Okay.
So you've got to think that this is a trail like in Colorado where you might have a narrow trail. You might have trees on both sides or a hill and then a drop off. If that horse goes off that trail, he's in a lot of trouble.
Right.
So you basically want to keep thinking about the horse going in a relatively straight line. Now, if you want to give a comment, the riders really enjoy a comment, but make it brief.
Right.
Okay, because you're not expected to be a clinician.
Yes.
You're not being paid to be a clinician. No. But you can make a comment. Now, some judges are tough judges. I'm a very tough judge, okay? And some judges are lenient judges, okay? And it doesn't matter if you're tough or if you're lenient, as long as you're consistent. Because the scoring is basically on a curve. And so it will be fair as long as you are consistent. So if, kind of think in your mind before you go out there, if you think, I really don't like a rider who doesn't carry their heels down, because I think that's pretty important to, center a rider on his horse. And, so if I see a rider that his heels down, I'm going to take off 5 points. Well, take off, then that's me.
That's consistency. But 5 points for every rider.
That means every rider that doesn't have his heels down,
5 points.
5 points. So just be consistent. Also remember that if you give everybody a 7, you're going to have ties all over the place, and your ride host is going to be really unhappy. So you want to be discerning. You want to look at the horse, at the rider, see the picture. But basically, how do you judge this? You want to look at this horse and go, is this a horse I would want to ride? If I had to ride across the country or go for a long trail ride in Colorado, or someplace where the terrain was rough, is this the horse I would want to be on? And that's how I kind of look at them. I don't care if they're, pretty or not pretty. That doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that this is a confident horse, and a horse that looks like he would be fun to ride. He's not being silly. And then there are a few other things. Athleticism.
Yes.
Really important. I wouldn't want to ride a clumsy horse.
No. No.
If this horse is tripping or stepping on things or is really not aware of where his body is, then I don't like that in a horse. So those are things you have complete discretion as a judge, because you are there. How did he stumble? How hard did he stumble?
Yes.
So that's where you have your discretion. Also, so athleticism. Does this look like a nice athletic performer? And cadence, that's another thing. You know, it is much easier to ride a horse who's traveling with rhythm.
Yes.
Okay, whether, you know, you don't want one that's all of a sudden speeding up and then slowing down.
No.
You know,
Right.
because that's not fun to ride. So you want to see cadence, which is just another word for rhythm.
Okay.
So that means if that horse comes in at a nice medium trot, he should maintain a nice medium trot. Now there's something else to be aware of, and that's a horse who's frightened, who's really frightened. He may do the obstacle,
Right.
but, you know, he's like, he can't get over that thing fast enough.
Yeah.
His head is up in the air, his eyes are bugged out, you know, and,
Right.
and he like flies across that thing.
Yes.
And see, that's not a good consistent rhythm, that's not fun to ride, and that's really a horse who's doing, he may be doing the obstacle,
Right.
but he's terrified. What we'd rather see is a horse who's confident, but moving at a nice pace.
Okay.
You know, so those are, you know, some of the things that are important.
Okay.
So what would you do if a rider asked you what his score is?
I wouldn't tell him.
Well,
No,
good.
I would not.
Good answer, because you don't want them to know their score until the
ahead
end of the
time,
ride.
right.
Because it's an opportunity for them to possibly argue with you.
Right.
And they
Yes.
may not argue with you. Okay?
Right.
You have absolute discretion. You can disqualify a rider
Okay.
if they should be rude. It's not very often that we
No.
have a rude
No, I
people,
wouldn't
but
think so.
but you don't want to tell them their score. Now, it's okay to be friendly and say, oh, good job,
Right.
you know, or you can say, oh, better luck next time.
Okay,
You know, or gee, that's something maybe you'd want to go home and practice.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
All
so
right.
you can say things like that.
Okay.
But I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't try to, certainly don't try to teach them.
No. No.
Because that's, you're there to kind of give them a score.
Right.
Now, another thing that we, that there's some confusion over is the pluses. You know,
Okay.
what are those, there's a plus column, and what is a plus for? Well, a plus breaks a tie, and
Okay.
that's all it does. It has no numerical score,
All right.
okay? But if you see a horse that really is doing a good job, or a rider that's maybe doing a good job on a difficult horse,
Okay.
say this horse throws in a wicked spook. I mean, he does a 360,
Yeah.
and that rider sits there, boom, that rider's right in the middle of that saddle. Well, you know, they may not get a high score,
Right.
but that rider sat beautifully.
Okay.
So you might want to say, plus,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
plus to that rider. Or,
All right.
you know, I saw a horse that the rider was going to get on, and the horse moved his hindquarters away. Well, every step he took, I took a point off.
Right.
And so he was kind of, you know, standing there crooked to the mounting block, and just then the rider was putting her foot in the stirrup, and these two Army helicopters flew up low overhead, making a racket, and that horse stood perfectly still.
Wow.
Well, I gave him a plus,
Well, yes.
because
yes.
even though he got a 7, I gave him a plus.
Right.
So those are things where, you know, those are just little nuances that I like to explain to the judges and let them know what that's for.